welcome to the Licensing Subcommittee this morning. We'll just start with some quick introductions. I'm David Barker, I'll be chairing the subcommittee, and I'm flanked by the members of the committee who will introduce themselves.
Maroof, Raouf, Councillor Sheffield.
Chinchen, Councillor, Stocksbridge and Upper member of the subcommittee. Thanks.
And you will notice one or two other people in the room who are the officers of the council that are working with us this morning. Would you like to introduce yourselves, please?
Carol Curtin, legal advisor. Good morning.
I'm Shimla Finch. I'm from the Licensing Service, so I'll be presenting the report.
Morning, it's Neil Pates, Environmental Protection Service.
Morning, Neil.
Martin McGrail, the licence holder.
Morning, Martin. And we also do have an observer in this morning, as well as it is a public meeting, which is also being webcast. So if you could remember, and I'm saying this much for my benefit as anybody else's, to use the microphone when you speak. One, the acoustics in this room aren't great, and two, it does actually fit in with the webcasting of the meeting. So if people could try and do that. And also remember to switch it off when you've stopped speaking, because if too many are on at the same time, then none of them work. So, right, well, the process for these hearings is fairly straightforward. Firstly, the licensing officer, who's Shimla this morning, will just introduce the report, which I'm sure you've seen and you've got a copy of. There's then a chance for members and for yourselves to ask any questions regarding that report, just to make sure we're happy with it and it's accurate, because that's the reason we're here this morning. We'll then introduce the responsible authorities and interested parties, though the interested parties can't be here today, though they have sent further representations. And they will state their case to us. There'll then be a chance for members and for yourself to ask questions of those people and respond to those concerns. And then it will be over to you as the applicant to state your case to us this morning and tell us why you think we should amend the licence. Again, there's then the opportunity for members and for the interested parties and responsible authorities to ask you questions regarding anything that's in your application. We will then give you the opportunity, you get the final say, you get the opportunity to sum up and tell us any key points you think we need to take into account when making a decision, and at that stage we'll ask the licensing officer to give us the options available to us. Once we've got those options, we'd ask you to leave the room with the licensing officer and the responsible authority so that we can take legal advice and come to a decision. And as soon as we've made that decision, we'll invite you back in and tell you what that is. Just a couple of other points on this is that any time we might need to seek legal advice, we can do that in open session with everyone in the room, or we may need to do that in private session, at which stage we'd ask you to leave so we can take that advice. Doesn't generally happen, but you never know. We could test Carol out at some stage this morning. And obviously, by the regulations, this meeting is in public unless anything crops up where we feel that it may need to be put into private session, but we have no reason to think that the whole of the meeting wouldn't be public other than our deliberations. And I'm sure it is actually much more straightforward than I've made it sound there. So, could we have the report, please, Shimla?
Thank you, Chair. This report is to consider an application for the variation of a premise licence for the Brass Monkey on Middlewood Road. The application was submitted by Mr Martin McGrail on the 2nd of January 2023 and attached at Appendix A of the report. The application requests to remove conditions 5 and 9 on Annex 3 of the premises licence, which are conditions attached to the licence by the Licensing Subcommittee at a hearing held on the 13th of August 2018. Conditions 5 and 9 are detailed on paragraph 2.5 of the report, and a full copy of the premises licence and conditions are attached at Appendix B of the report. The application has been referred to the Licensing Subcommittee as there are unresolved representations against the application, in particular to the removal of Condition 5. One representation is from the Environmental Protection Service and the other is from 2 local residents who have made a joint representation. Copies of the objections can be found at Appendix C of the report. All parties have been invited to the hearing. Notices are attached at Appendix D, which include the hearing procedure. The local residents have confirmed that they're unable to attend today. There are no specific financial implications arising from this application. However, additional costs may be incurred should the matter go to appeal. it's recommended that members carefully consider the representations made and take such steps as the subcommittee consider appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Shimla. Have members got any questions regarding the report at all? Can I just check, has the applicant been provided with the additional representations from? I don't think there'll be anything in there that's a surprise to you, but obviously, in the interest of fairness, you ought to see all the information that we've been presented with as well. And we've only received it this morning, so it's not that we've had a lot of time to sit and consider it. Right, if there are no questions regarding the report, then it's over to Environmental Protection to detail your concerns to us this morning regarding this application.
Thank you, Chair. Environmental Protection Service have only objected in relation to condition 5, so that's the removal of the condition that prohibits the playing of amplified sound on the premises. It's really quite a basic position, so I don't want to over-complicate it. The significant history of noise nuisance arising from amplified sound music when it has been played on the premises. The current occupiers of the residential property, which is the primary dwelling that's affected, and it's directly above the premises, have complained to our service, and on a couple of occasions we have witnessed sound from the premises breaking through into their property at a level that's likely to cause nuisance, and it's also been witnessed by an attending enforcement officer of licensing service, and I think certainly in some correspondence with myself and with colleagues in licensing service, Mr. McGrail has implied that this is perhaps due to oversensitivity or a malicious intent of the occupier of the dwelling above, but we have also had similar problems evidenced from when the flat was occupied by the previous occupant, so we're certainly of the opinion that this isn't down to any malicious complaints, and that it is a genuine issue. Having said that, we don't particularly feel that this is down to the premises being overly or having the music overly loud. It's much more an issue with the fabric of the building and the way that it's constructed, and the problems that are inherent in having a dwelling directly over a licensed premises in a building of that age and construction. I'll draw your attention to the fact that the condition isn't one of the ones that was initially applied when the licence was first granted. It was one that was applied later, subject to noise issues having been evidenced. So it was applied for a reason which was established by having witnessed problems, and we know that the physical situation within the premises has not changed since that time. No further additional sound attenuation works or sound insulation measures have been installed at the premises since the works that were undertaken in connection with the planning consent having been granted for the change of use. I do highlight in my representation that those works didn't take place prior to the premises commencing trading. There was a short period in between planning consent having been granted, but a relevant pre-commencement condition requiring an approved scheme of sound attenuation works not having been properly discharged. So there was a period of trading where noise problems were evidenced and sound attenuation works were outstanding, but those were then undertaken, and the measures were tested, and that planning condition was discharged. However, the testing that was undertaken was done without any amplified sound on the premises, the understanding being that there was no intention to have amplified sound on the premises, and so that was the conditions under which the current sound attenuation works were tested and approved. The number of occasions where nuisance has been witnessed have been quite limited, and I think that's down to the fact that at the moment there is this condition in place that prohibits amplified music, and it's only been when there have been lapses in that control that we seem to have had problems. I do know that Mr. McGrail has changed the management within the premises recently, and doubtless he'll say that this will help to address some of the problems which have occurred previously and which we've witnessed. However, I think it's relevant to point out that on those occasions when nuisance has been witnessed, it's been stated in correspondence from Mr. McGrail and what's been witnessed at the time. As I say, it's not that it's been excessive levels of music, and on occasion it's been played either through the audio-visual equipment on the premises, a TV, or through one of these small Alexa-type speakers, which is quite a modest sound source, but nevertheless has given rise to nuisance for the occupier above. In the application, Mr. McGrail suggests that a potential solution to allow music on the premises would be to install an SL2000 sound limiter device and to set that to a suitably low threshold sound level, which would trigger the device cutting out the music and thereby prevent nuisance. And my representation highlights that this is an impracticable proposition. That sound level, sound limiting device works by monitoring the sound level with a microphone within the premises, and when a certain sound level is exceeded, it cuts out the power supply to the amplified sound. The problem is that setting the sound level at that modest 60 dB limit would leave it vulnerable to being triggered by other ambient sound generated by customers and general trading noise, and would prevent the system operating effectively. Obviously, it would work properly if sound levels were higher, and that is the scenario that type of equipment is designed for. It's designed to limit noise in a louder music bar or nightclub type scenario where the music is the predominant sound, and it's that is monitored by the microphone, but it's not a suitable system where you're looking to control amplified sound to more modest levels that are roughly equivalent to or only marginally exceeding the level of trading noise, which is the situation that I think is suggested, that he wants background level noise. I think in a licensed premises you've got to be aware that background level noise isn't quite what you might understand if it were in a lift or a restaurant. It is slightly louder than that, but a lot of premises do trade with that level of noise. The problem is this premises just isn't suited to that. We've got significant evidence to confirm that the structure of the building just can't insulate that level of noise from the occupier, and that's the position that they've maintained in their representation that I'm aware of. Mr McGrail has suggested that he'd like to implement some further sound insulation works to allow music to be played. EPS aren't inherently opposed to such works being undertaken, and if they were undertaken to a suitable standard, then potentially amplified sound could be allowed. But it would be premature, in EPS opinion, to grant music to be allowed on the presumption that such works will be undertaken in the future. It would be far more appropriate to undertake such works, to have the works validated with some suitable testing. The occupiers of the flat above have said they're more than willing to cooperate, to allow access, to allow such tests to be undertaken. And that would then give both EPS and licensing service confidence to allow music to a known level that had been established by validation testing. However, I would stress that I am pessimistic that such works would be successful. The age and construction of the building would require really quite significant and technically competent sound insulation measures. We're aware that there's already been one attempt to insulate between the premises and the dwelling above in connection with the planning consent, and those works were only partially successful, only attenuating sound to a level that allows trading without amplified sound. And I very recently dealt with a planning application from a very similar building, similar construction, similar age, and with a similar proposal to implement a licensed premises use under an existing dwelling. And the noise assessment that's been undertaken for that premises highlighted the types of problems that we're very likely to encounter here in terms of having to remedy flanking transmission through the various gaps that are inherent in a property of that age. So by flanking transmissions, I mean noise that can permeate due to penetrations in the building structure, either service entries or just gaps in construction that develop over time. Things like transmission pathways via chimneys, where floor joists meet into the walls, and due to changes and modifications that have occurred over the years as the premises has been altered for various different forms of use. To achieve the standard of sound insulation that we'd really be looking for would require the premises to effectively strip back to brick and seal all of these small defects and holes, gaps, and to implement a very extensive sound insulation measures. And whilst that's not unachievable, it's a significant scale of works that requires a high degree of technical competence and would certainly require advice from a competent acoustic professional and oversight of the works to ensure that they were done to the required standard. As I say, we're not opposed to these works being undertaken, but I think it would be premature of the licensing service to assume that they would be, and to grant this request in advance. That's the essence of the EPS position. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll open this up to questions then now. Is there anything, Maroof, you'd like to ask at this stage? Lewis?
Yes, please, Chair. Can I just ask where the current investigation into the premises, what the status of that is, what the current position is? Is it still ongoing?
Thank you, Councillor. The investigation hasn't been closed. but it has been dormant for a couple of months at least. It would seem that, say in the last couple of months, there have been no further instances of nuisance, which I assume is down to the diligence of the current management in implementing the condition which is currently in force. Essentially, I've kept the case open, really just to see what the outcome of today is. I anticipate if the condition remains in force and is complied with, that we won't evidence further nuisance. However, I do fear that if amplified sound is allowed, then we are likely to have a resumption of complaints. So I'm awaiting the outcome of today to decide whether to close the case or not.
Thank you. Are there any other dwellings directly above the premises in addition to the one referred to previously?
I don't believe so. There's one dwelling, you know, they're kind of aligned.
And just going back to 2018 with the subcommittee then, when this condition was originally put onto the licence, obviously that subcommittee came about because of, I think, reports of nuisance. Are you able to give any more information on what exactly that was in relation to, you know, the scale of reports, any information particularly leading up to that 2018 subcommittee hearing?
I think the complaints that we initially received when the premises commenced trading without the sound insulation, which is currently in place, having been installed, were more to do with general trading noise, and there were a multiple number of problems. It was everything from just being able to hear customer voices to being able to hear barrel movements and deliveries. There were problems, I think, with the toilet door closure, banging, with a hand dryer in the toilet, with the noise from tables and chairs when they were being moved during trading and after trading during cleaning. That it really was every noise that was made within the building was a problem for the people above, because at the time the separation was really just the floorboards of the flat above over wooden joists, and then the old lath and plaster ceiling attached to those floorboards below. When there were some sound insulation works installed, then a large proportion of those complaints did cease, but the level of problem that was established at that time was sort of an alert that having amplified sound and any unnecessary noise on top of the trading noise that's inherent with the change of use that was granted would be unwise. And I think on the occasions where there had been any amplified sound, that had also contributed to the complaints that we'd received. It simply made sense to reduce the sound that the premises created to a minimum.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Just a couple of things to clarify. You touched on this a bit, but you mentioned significant history of noise. Could you just expand on significant history and perhaps how that compares with other sort of similar establishments in terms of complaints about noise?
Yeah, so I don't want to over-egg the pudding in terms of the current situation and the current residents. When I say significant history, I'm referring to the whole history of the premises, and there really were great problems when the premises first started trading. They continued for some time and were only partially resolved by the implementation of sound attenuation works in connection with the planning consent and that pre-commencement condition. So the majority of the history was around that scenario in 2019, mostly, I think it was. 2018, 2019. I don't have all of the records. The problems which have occurred more recently have been, as I say, down to these occasional lapses, and have really just served to demonstrate that the condition is a prudent one, and that whilst the premises can trade reasonably comfortably as a quiet drinking establishment with no amplified sound, as soon as amplified sound is introduced, whether it be from the TV or a small satellite wireless speaker, then sound issues are exacerbated, and it leads to complaint. I think this is as much down to the nature of amplified sound as the actual sound level. Trading noise is intermittent, inconsistent, variable, and perhaps perceived as inevitable given the use below. Amplified sound, music and the TV, whatever, is perceived as an annoyance from something which is both known to be prohibited and known to be avoidable. And it's a more continuous sound source when you are playing music, and it has characteristics that tend to be more intrusive, particularly the bass frequency elements.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just a quick clarification. So you've had complaints from residents above Brass Monkey. Have you had complaints from residents on either side of Brass Monkey?
No.
Carol, is there anything you would wish to ask the Bristol? Then you'll have every opportunity to respond to these and to put your application, but do you have any specific questions you'd like to ask at this stage?
Do, yes.
I thought you might. Your opportunity then.
Yeah. Condition 5, just need to clarify, it's amplified music, not amplified sound. So there is a difference. That's why we've got a TV on the walls, and we use that. There's been no objection for using the TV. And I just need clarification. What is the difference between music and amplified sound coming from the TV? Because it clearly states amplified music.
That's a good question on which I would need to seek some clarity. When we say no, well, if it specifically says no amplified music, would that bar having a television on? Or would that just bar them having MTV on the television? Which would be, yeah.
I'm just saying, I do apologise for that. I'm just saying, I suppose it would be the level of the amplified music, and that they were trying to reach a lower one at, I think, 60 decibels, whereas anything over that would depend on what type of music was being played on the TV.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. It perhaps might better have read amplified sound rather than amplified music, because I'm sure we could have a legal argument about this that may go on for several years clarifying. But I think what tried to achieve, and obviously didn't in that aspect, was noise nuisance as opposed to music, I think was the intention, though that could be interpreted differently given the wording you've just pointed out.
Yeah, that's my point. You know, when we've had visits before, there's been no objection with the TV or anything being played for sports or general, programmes. It's always been around the music. So there's never been any objection or complaint about the TV being noisy. But in the wording in the licence specifically says amplified music. And I'm surmising that's why we're here today, is because of the music and not the amplified sound. So there's a bit of a contradiction there.
Seek point clarity. You did mention the television. Have there been issues with television noise disturbing the residents in the property above?
There have been issues reported to us, and I think on one instance it was believed to be the television that was the source of the amplified sound that had caused nuisance. But I do acknowledge that the condition merely prohibits live and amplified music. I'm sorry to disagree with the legal advisor, but I think the wording of the condition is quite clear in drawing that distinction. So the wording would prohibit unamplified music, but would not prohibit amplified sound, which was not music. So the operation of the television would not be in breach of the condition, although, of course, it could lead to a public or statutory nuisance. And I think that the level of the television, if it were in use, would certainly dictate whether nuisance was likely to be caused. In retrospect, one would have perhaps included other amplified sound in that condition, but it's not covered. And I would certainly encourage the licence holder to not play amplified sound through the television at anything other than a background level, because that would be likely to cause nuisance. And I would also remind the licence holder that if music were played through the television, that would be a breach of the licence condition at whatever level.
So don't have the theme songs to any of these programmes playing.
Yeah, I mean, just picking up on that. As far as I'm aware, we've had no complaints about sports being playing through the TVs. It was a music channel on the TV which caused an issue. So again, it's differentiating what's acceptable levels through the TV as normal aired programmes, as I say, to music. We've always reiterated it's no music whatsoever to all our staff, and that's what we've tried to stick by.
Have you any further questions of the responsible authorities before you have the opportunity to detail your application to us?
Yeah, just another clarification. Some of the complaints were pre-planning. Once we did the soundproofing to take off the precondition, we were always going to get reports because, as I said, the attached properties, local businesses did not want us to open. So there was a massive influx of complaints from the outset, but we've always tried to accommodate and work with others, which we have done. We've only got one person or two people upstairs which are dead against the actual business being there in its entirety.
I think there has been an acknowledgement that some of the initial issues have been addressed. It's simply the amplified music now that remains a concern. So, would you like to tell us why you think we should then approve this application?
Yeah, I mean, the reason why I submitted a variance is because obviously we received two complaints for amplified music, which I was led to believe and looked at our CCTV that it wasn't a substantial argument. I just listened to our staff, having subsequently followed that up. It is apparent that they were using an Alexa on various occasions. Now, just give a bit of background. Victoria and Mike, who lived directly above, used to work for me and my partner. I actually got them the flat. I used to contribute to their rent up until beginning of last year, until I stopped contributing to their rent. So I'm not in any way saying this is as a result, but I'm just giving you the background. As soon as I got the complaint, I contacted Victoria to see if they still lived upstairs. I was gutted that to find out that they were upstairs, and because I took their word for it. I listened to their argument about the music, and I took that on board and apologised and said, well, regardless of the outcome today, we'll be doing some soundproofing work anyway to try and restrict any day-to-day operation and, as I say, general business. Licensing, when they did approach us about these two complaints, advised us to put in a variation to alleviate any issues and to bring all parties together. That's why we put in a licensing application to vary it. It's not something we just jumped up and thought, right, we'll just bash everybody around the head and push through a variation. We've submitted it knowing that all parties concerned connected to the property will be brought to the table to argue their case. And I'm glad in a way because we've made contact with everybody else to actually take our business forward. Just want to reiterate, at no point have we ever, or I took control of the business since September. Got more hands-on, which allows me to actually directly influence and manage the property, but finding the right staff has always been difficult. Luckily, I think we've found the right person now to manage it and implement all licensing conditions and work with our neighbours to deliver a business that doesn't infringe on anybody else's day-to-day activity. Hoping that it can be looked at, come up with some options for us, because it has difficulty. It's all right saying a business in a quiet atmosphere, but more businesses have opened up. Micropubs have just opened up, which are allowed to play amplified music. This has been detrimental to our business. So that's why we're looking at just trying to make it more a better customer experience without going over the top and compete with others now, which are on our doorstep. It's nothing more than anything trying to stay alive.
Are you happy for me to open this up to questions then now? And of course, if there's anything you've missed, you do get the final say, so do come back in at the end. Lewis, is there anything that you would like to ask the applicant at this stage?
Just one for now, please, Chair. So was it just with the use of the Alexa device, was it one individual then that was doing that, or were there other members of staff involved?
Yeah, having spoken to Victoria, Mikey approached the bar staff on 2 occasions to actually tell them to turn the Alexa down, and they were just shrugged off. And that's not what the impression we got from our staff. So, unfortunately, we just thought it was neighbours being, just looking for conflict and looking for something to complain. As soon as we found out that it was Mikey who went down in attendance, I was gutted because, as I say, they both used to work for us previously. So, I think it was the one individual who just thought he could do what he wanted. And we brought that to a head and terminated his employment.
Were you or anyone else aware of the use of the device before they came down to complain? No. As I said, the device was in there. It was never plugged in when we was in. Even when the attendants from licensing went in, just saw it physically on a shelf, but it wasn't plugged in. Obviously, this individual was plugging it in and having his music on when he felt like it. But again, we reiterated throughout the employment and all last year to everybody who worked there that these are the licensing conditions, not for amplified music. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Maroof, is there anything you'd like to ask?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair. Just want to take you back to 2018. And in the subcommittee at the time, you stated that the premises would be fully soundproofed. Can I just clarify? Is that in place at the moment?
It's not. No, that was a that was a pre-license hearing. We weren't even submitted with a premise license at that point. The condition, the soundproofing referred to the actual precondition from planning, which we undertook a couple of weeks after opening, which obviously we didn't understand the process at the time, but we reacted on it as soon as it was made aware.
Okay, so just to further clarify then, as of 21st of February 2023, just want to get clarification on this. In your opinion, is the premises fully soundproofed?
Correct, yes, because we did the attenuation works. We put soundproofing in there, obviously after when we opened, but it did make a big difference, and we did that, as I say, it's not with amplified music or anything like that, but it was noise travel, which was tested as a condition.
Okay. And further to that, you also stated in 2018 that the frontage would be kept clear. Is that currently in place, and do you have any chairs or tables outside of the front?
We do, yeah, and that was granted with the pavement licence, with obviously because of COVID and that type of thing. So that's still in place, and I believe that's still in place till the end of this year.
And when's that in place till?
I think there's a date on it till the end of this year. I'm not sure if it's a city-wide date when people have to start removing outside furniture and get back to normal. But at present, it's still in place.
Okay, thank you.
Only until, I think it's 9 o'clock as well. I think the table and chairs have to be in from...
That was going to be my next question. I'll just go a bit further with that. Just in regards to your doors, what time do your doors close?
Doors, so during the week it's 10 o'clock, cleaners, everybody's out by 10, Friday and Saturday it's 11, but obviously staff are in cleaning up and that type of thing.
All right. Just in regards to your patrons, how do you go about risk assessing patrons? What do you do to ensure that hopefully they won't cause any issues?
I'm not sure if you've been to Brass Monkey, but it's the size of a transit van. It's really that small. The staff are clearly briefed on monitoring staff. Direct call to me if there's any issues. The CCTV is fully in operation, so we do take full precautions. Weekends we have door staff just for them during the matches and stuff.
Okay, no further questions at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Firstly, why amplified music? What is the benefit of that for your business?
So amplified music is just having background noise. It's nothing over because as I say, it's a small place. I could be sat in one corner listening to somebody else's conversation. It's just to take off the edge of sitting in, totally, you could hear a pin drop. And as I say, it's just making a better customer experience, just like the other bars are down the road, the other micropubs. It's not as entertainment, it's just a background noise.
Now, you mentioned additional soundproofing to help control this. We've also heard that could be extremely difficult and potentially extremely expensive. I just wonder if it's something you looked into and what your thoughts were.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to do it anyway, regarding the outcome of this hearing. So we've already started buying, I think it's North insulation barriers. We are going to try and do it. It's okay saying it might need extensive work, but every bit helps. Putting a new ceiling, soundproof ceiling in, just stop the travel from going upwards. As I say, neighbours on the right and left-hand side are more than happy with how the business is being operated. Neighbours above to the left are content, they don't have any issues. So it's really the travel of sound going up. We didn't have any complaints during a certain period. It's just when, obviously, the complaints from the outset was, in our view, all against opening the business in its entirety from day one. We've alleviated some of those pressures and built on some of those relationships. Now the issue has been around certain staff member playing amplified music, which has definitely caused nuisance to Victoria and Mike upstairs.
And would you be consulting with Environmental Protection about the works you're undertaking? Because obviously you may spend a lot of money and not achieve anything by the sound of some of the
Yeah, I mean, some of the solutions, what we've got, obviously, is tested by others. But once we put in some of these barriers in, we will be testing it and providing the details to licensing and environmental services. I've learned a lesson. You have got to incorporate all key stakeholders to just get it across the line and make sure that everybody's comfortable with it. As I say, it's a small place. It's not going to be financially significant to try these remedies. It's just something we've got to do anyway to alleviate some of the day-to-day operationals. Without the amplified music, day-to-day operation with barrels and that type of stuff, we just need to try and alleviate as much as possible.
And I think you admitted to some extent yourself that when the residents came to complain, the complaints weren't handled particularly well. Have you put in, what have you done to kind of address that now?
Yeah, as I said, I didn't know Mikey and Victoria were still upstairs in there. So now I've got direct contact. I've been in touch with Victoria, as you can see with the letter, and just told her to, contact me direct if there is any issues whatsoever, no matter what time, and then we'll jump on that, rather than Victoria or Mikey having to go into a bar, speak to staff. If there's customers there, sometimes that can be uncomfortable. They can come straight to me now, and we'll address it.
Are there any further questions from members? Do you have any questions for the applicant at this stage?
No questions.
Then actually it goes back to you fairly quickly to sum up your application.
Yeah, I mean, just to recap, you know, I am here to work with our neighbours and to work with everybody who's got an interest in delivering a business. We are prepared, you know, even to look at the hours of using amplified music as background noise, whether we have to restrict it from 10 o'clock further down the line to make sure our neighbours have got, you know, time to do their own thing without any interference from us downstairs. So looking at that kind of stuff, looking at the soundproofing, we are prepared to look at all options just to manage it, whether we have a period of, you know, monitoring. So, you know, we have a period to put in the soundproofing, we monitor the situation, then we come back to licensing to discuss some of the data and some of the facts that have come out of it, and hopefully we'll have no more complaints going forward.
Thank you. Could we have the options then, please, Shimla?
Thank you. The options open to the committee is 1, to vary the premises licence in the terms requested, 2, to vary the premises licence with conditions, and 3, to reject whole or part of the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I ask you to now leave the room with the licensing officers while we take some legal advice? And as soon as we come to a decision, we'll invite you back in. So, condition, the variation to condition 9, absolutely no problem with that. No one objected to it anyway, so we don't have an issue with that. In terms of condition 5, we are not at this moment in time minded to remove that condition. We are pleased to see that you're taking the complaints seriously, that you're looking to work to address them. But until we actually see evidence that something's happened to address it, then I don't think we can really say, I'm going to do this, okay, we'll remove the condition. We'd like to see that you've made that work, that you work with environmental protection, and I hope that you can come to a sensible solution that will mean that condition 5 doesn't last on the licence for much longer. But just at the moment in time, we don't have the evidence. We have evidence to show that recorded music is causing issues to residents. We don't have evidence to show that the problem's been addressed, though we do have evidence to show that you are now engaging with them and engaging with environmental health, and we look forward to hopefully you're not having to come back here, that if you get it addressed you can put a variation in and no one objects to it. Obviously you haven't got everything you wanted, so this decision, you do have the right of appeal against this decision. So that's the decision of the licensing committee this morning, and I say thank you for your time, and if there's anything we can do in terms of help or advice moving forward, just get in touch with us. And thank you for clarifying the bits that we've all had a discussion on about amplified music or amplified sound. It's something that we'll definitely take away from this.